Hello everybody, this is Leo Brady with AMovieGuy.com. I am so excited to be here today with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Joe Lynch, director of his awesome new film, Suitable Flesh. Joe, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me. Wait, are we like on camera?
Yeah.
Oh man. Wait, why aren't you on camera?
No,
This is bullshit.
This is how I do it.
I can't be the only sexy guy on this shot, but okay.
All right.
I'll be enough for two.
Yeah, come on. So I like to start my interviews by asking directors, what is a movie or movie experience that made you say, I want to be a director?
Oh, I know exactly the one. And I've said this many times before, but you know what? We've never talked about it before.
Yep.
Ready?
Yep.
August 6th, 3:10 p.m. show, Brookhaven Multiplex, 1988.
Okay.
That was when I saw Chuck Russell's The Blob.
Oh my God, awesome.
And
yes.
So what's funny is that I've been telling this story since August 6th.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. in 1988 going, I now know what a director does.
Yeah.
But for the longest time, up until maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, before the Shout Factory Blu-ray came out,
Yeah.
The Blob was not easily available.
Yeah.
It popped up on a streaming service every once in a while, but it would be a crappy copy.
Right.
But you couldn't find a good version of it anywhere other than like an import.
Right.
But that movie was that really changed everything for me.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, I either wanted to be an actor or I wanted to be a makeup effects artist.
Yeah.
So I essentially wanted to be Tom Savini.
Right. Not a bad guy to want to
No,
be.
not a bad icon to work off of
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
But I loved to write, and I loved like working, like talking to other actors even when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you know, I loved to shoot stuff when I was doing my VHS movies and stuff like that. I was enjoying that part too.
Yeah.
And there was something about the culmination of all the skill sets and all of the craftsmen, women, what have you, that were all putting this film together.
Yeah.
And it worked so well that I remember the moment going, okay, wait, so the director helps with the script and works with the actors and gets to stick his hands in all the ultra slime too, and
right.
probably is a big part about the shooting and probably deals with the editing. I love that part too. And
yeah.
Wait, so the director does all of that or is part of all of that? That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And one of the most gratifying things I've ever had was years later, Chuck Russell and I became friends.
Oh, awesome.
And to be able to just to tell him, you're the reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
And you're the reason why I'm here showing you my movie.
Right.
Like the fact that it came full circle was just the best thing in the world, you know, because, you know, I mean, he's made a lot of movies himself and everything, but
yeah.
I think he even felt like, wow, like it's hard sometimes when you think about like what impact you have as a filmmaker, whether you're making good movies, bad movies, or everything in between.
Right.
That you will hopefully, if you're passionate enough and that's conveyed on screen and your vision or your voice is there as well,
yeah.
someone is going to see that.
Yeah.
And someone might be inspired by that.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's interesting too because Suitable Flesh is not outside of your wheelhouse of films, but like after seeing Everly and Point Blank, like that is definitely more action geared.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but this you're sort of stepping back into like full on horror, and I know that there's like debates back and forth about like elevated horror, you know, whatever.
Look, if you look at all my movies, not to toot my own horn or whatever, but my mom reminds me enough when she's on my IMDb.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever made a straight anything.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Right.
But that's because of that's where my cinematic fetishes lie. Like I love horror and I love action and I love comedy and I love melodrama and like I love sci-fi. So I think being able to utilize all of these like tonal fetishes in a way.
Yeah.
I think personally it helps me because I can not think like, well, I can only do this one type of film.
Totally.
You know, I feel like I can do a bunch of them, and have examples of that.
Right.
Now, that said, some people don't like that. And to that I say, oh, well, go watch something else.
Right.
But I feel like I've gotten to a point in my career, which is so crazy to even say that, where I can pick movies that, or a story really needs to excite me.
Yeah.
It needs to give me, and pardon my French, but it needs to really give me a Cinnabonner.
Yep.
And once I go, oh, there's a Cinnabonner.
Right.
I get it now.
Right.
But to answer your question, this is it is a return to horror in certain respects, and I'm so glad to be in this genre that I grew up with. That was part of my upbringing, part of my creative and career upbringing. So to come back to it has been grand, but I also needed to come back to it from a new perspective.
Yeah.
And from a personal standpoint, a lot of shit has happened in my life the last couple of years, good and bad.
Yeah.
And I know that 20 years from now, I'm gonna be able to look back at this film and go, that is such a snapshot of this point in my life.
Right.
On both sides of the screen, that it makes me really proud, even though it's hard for me to still watch the movie because I still see all the flaws and everything. And
Right.
But the fact that I was able to tell the story in the way that I don't think anyone else, other than maybe Stewart Gordon, could have told it. It makes me really proud of what we were able to do. At this point.
Yeah. Well, and even getting into sort of that H.P. Lovecraft story, the screenplay, Dennis Paoli, is that how you say his name?
Yep.
Was there anything in his story, when you go through that screenplay, do you want to make sure your voice is in there too, or is it just you want to be true to the text, or at least true to what a Lovecraft movie might look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, when Stewart and Dennis were working on all of their collaborations together, because they had done a fair amount of Lovecraft stories together.
Yeah.
Everything from, obviously, Reanimator and From Beyond.
Right.
Dagon, the Masters of Horror episode that they have done. They clearly cornered the market in how to bring what is many times considered unfilmable. They somehow cracked the code in figuring out how to bring Lovecraft to the big and the small screen.
Yeah.
But when I read that script, which was going to be Stewart's last film,
wow,
I really liked it. But at the same time, I was like, the fact that this is a male gaze erotic thriller that has horror histrionics in it might have played well 20 years ago. Right. Right now, that's not exciting. And if anything, it might be problematic from this point of view. Right. So when my writing partner and I pitched Dennis and Barbara our version of it, which was gender swapping, but not just changing the names up, but to really explore what it's like to be in this kind of situation from a female gaze perspective, an older woman's perspective. Yeah. To explore sexuality that's not just new by a young 20-year-olds. Right. But women and men and women who, have been through a lot of sexual situations before and now are maybe put to the ultimate test with their own identities and having their own bodies kind of taken away from them and losing their own, body's license. Yeah. So when we did that, that Dennis really liked the idea, Barbara really liked the idea. And then from there, when he delivered his script, a lot of it was already there, but there's something called the director's pass, where, I'm allowed to kind of step in. And a lot of that is honestly, it's once we cast it, when I know that I have Heather Graham and I know I have Judah Lewis and I know I have Barbara Crampton and then all these, because I'm a screenwriter myself, I'm doing it to benefit these actors and really hone in on their specialties and know that, well, you know what, I don't think Barbara would say that, or it doesn't, it might rhythmically not sound right. Yeah. Heather Graham saying this particular line, or Judah, or whoever, or Jonathan. Yeah. Bruce as well. We rewrote a lot of Bruce's stuff once we cast Bruce. Yeah. Because I I think originally the character was supposed to sound much more British and very regal. And
Right.
I don't know if Bruce would. That just doesn't sound right. you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of it just was an evolution of it. I mean, that's one of the skill sets that I'm proud of, that I can kind of have in my back pocket as a weapon, is as a writer myself, you know, at least I'm not in the WGA, but, you know, like I'm my own, you know, best rewriter in a way, you know, and so that when we were, you know, like right up to the day of, or even during the shoot, there are times that something has to be rewritten. And Dennis, unfortunately, you know, like he's in another state and in another time zone. And it's a lot easier for me to go, boop, boop, boop. You know, I'm always honoring what Dennis had done, you know, but when you have to get in there and do it quickly, but do it where you're being respectful to the process and knowing like, fuck, I gotta cut 2 pages out of this day, but I have to sew it together in a way that's gonna make sense.
Right.
I can't send this out to the writer who's in another state, who's not gonna get that my first AD needs to go cut down. So I have to come up with that stuff.
Right.
That's part of the director's process, you know.
Yeah.
And if you're a director that knows how to write, it really helps in a pinch.
Like you have to be on your toes. You can't. There's always the unpredictable. I get it in filmmaking.
So many times that's happened.
Now I feel like this is probably going to be the main topic. This should be the main topic about like every interview that you have.
Okay.
And you talked a little bit about Heather Graham. So it is of my opinion and other film critics that I know that she kind of like got hosed by Hollywood in many, many ways. She's like an actress that was amazing in Boogie Nights. She's an absolute star in Austin Powers, and like this feels so good. Like and it's like, not to give you the credit, give you and Heather the credit. Like it feels so great to see her get a role of this magnitude, and like she nails it. She just blows it out of the water. So, like, first of all, like, what made you say to Heather Graham? Maybe it's just because she's Heather Graham, but like, also, how you know, do you think, or do you hope that this catapults her career? I mean, I want to see her in more horror. I mean, I think she's great.
Start this up. I love Heather Graham. Yes. Look, I'll be totally honest with you. I've been a Heather devotee for a very long time, meaning like License to Drive. Back in the day.
Right.
Where I was obsessed with her. She's like, you know, and I'm not even if I have a proclivity, I was never a blondes guy at first. Now I am. Big time. But back then, like, she wasn't my type, but there was something like offbeat about her in the best way. I mean, that is the highest compliment. Then you see her in Drugstore Cowboy.
Right.
And she's terrifying. She's heartbreaking. She's doing everything.
Right.
So I was already a fan from that. I mean, Boogie Nights, I think everyone remembers her as Roller Girl, but they remember her more in the first half of Boogie Nights, where it's just her rolling around and getting naked, and she's all bubbly, and, you know, she's doing the kooky Heather Graham thing.
Right.
People forget that scene when they're in the limo.
Yeah.
And there is a look that she gives that has haunted me since the day I saw that movie. When the camera like zooms in on her when she realizes who the kid is that she's about to have sex with, what she's doing in that situation. She's probably gacked out of her brains too.
Yeah. And
there is so much in that one moment that when the name came up, like when we were looking for an actor for this, because look, let's be honest, like this movie wouldn't have been made without a name.
Yeah.
And, you know, Heather's been in the game for a very long time, but I don't think she'd had a role like this for whatever reason.
Yeah.
You know? And when they mentioned Heather, that shot popped in my head, and I went, now that's a fucking great idea.
Right.
Because not just that, but, you know, she's somewhat easy on the eyes.
Yes.
To be fair.
Yep.
She was at the age that I wanted to find an actor, you know, a woman, you know, in her late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
You know, we kept getting tossed all these names of women in their 20s and 30s, and I'm like, that's not gonna help our thesis here.
Right.
We want to find someone who is, you know, of this certain age that we can really play with the themes of sexual identity and, you know, sexuality amongst older people, not just men, but, you know, women as well.
Yeah.
And be able to explore that in a very mature but also a very sexy way. And we also need someone that I think would be comfortable being able to do this.
Yeah.
And she just checked off all the boxes, on paper.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't mean that she's gonna do it, or that she would get the role.
Right.
But also, she's playing multiple roles.
Yeah.
Some actors take movies like this because they have to pay the bills or they need their insurance upped.
Right.
This was a lot of work for her.
Yeah.
And at the same time, she's putting together another movie to direct.
Wow.
So and I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, I hope she doesn't learn from my mistakes. Or maybe she should, who knows? But there was a lot riding on her, on all of us, but on her especially, that she had so much to do in this. And within 20 minutes of our first Zoom call, I think both of us agreed, we're doing this movie, huh?
Yeah.
This is gonna happen, because we were both excited every time. It's like when we're talking.
Yeah.
When you get excited about something, a movie, like a role, an idea, whatever, you're listening to the person, but you can't wait to talk. Right. That was us on a Zoom call. We were like, oh my God, we were like a bunch of schoolgirls on a Friday night talking about the latest boys or what's the gossip.
You just want to it's like you want to end the conversation and go make the movie in that moment, right?
And we, at that point, it was, it was, I think, 2020, it was like late 2021.
Yeah.
And, at that point, it was just like, please don't book anything significant for the next 6 months. That's hard for an actor to be told that, but just keep us in mind, because we don't know what's going to happen with this. And then just all of a sudden, the money came through, the investors went go, and we were off to the races.
That's awesome.
So it was like, thank God she was available at that time, because after that, I became obsessed with I don't want anybody else.
Yeah.
It's got to be Heather in this, and I want to explore with her.
Yeah.
I don't want someone who's gonna, because at that point she had already started putting the work in. She was working with with a coach on different roles and stuff like that. That work in this. So she was invested in it, and I didn't want to lose that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, also too with Barbara Crampton, I couldn't believe this was the first time you worked with her. I mean,
no, it was the second.
Second time.
Yeah.
What was the first time?
The first time was an episode of Creep Show.
Okay. All right.
But it was one of those people that I would always see out, at functions, and she knew my work, I knew her work. We were always very friendly to each other. But we had never really had the opportunity to work together until she emailed me about the script.
Yeah.
Then, and this was right in the middle of the pandemic. So 6 weeks in, I was supposed to go shoot an episode, 2 episodes of Creep Show.
Yeah.
Which I was so stoked about. I couldn't wait.
Right.
And and in that time, I got the script and I was talking to Barbara. When we came back to shooting that in September, October of 2021, I had started conversing with Barbara so much, we had become friends through this collaboration.
Right.
That made me go, what about Barbara? To play this part of this evil landlady.
Yeah.
It was never intended before, and thank God that happened, because I wouldn't have cast her or thought to have cast her in that role if it wasn't for her emailing me during the pandemic.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it was a little nerve-wracking though, because it was also she, at the time, she was not supposed to be in Suitable Flesh.
Yeah.
She was going to just be a producer.
Yeah.
So me on set directing Barbara, which was a fucking trip.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was a trip.
Yeah, I bet.
But she was amazing to work with.
Right.
It was also a bit of an audition in
Yeah.
a way, because I wanted her to see that I knew how to make a day.
Right.
And purely from a producing standpoint, the best thing you can do when you watch a director is go, oh, we made our day. If I had been, no, I need 14 more takes,
right,
or been an asshole on set, I don't think I would have directed the movie.
Yeah.
So at the end of the shoot, I remember her going I cannot wait to shoot this movie with you.
Yeah.
That was the best feeling in the world. And then,
and then she gives that performance.
But again, she wasn't supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah.
She was only going to just produce.
I feel like she's the most unstoppable person at times. And it's and it's almost sad at times as well that more for us, right? More for the horror fans and all that stuff. But it's I feel like there's nothing she can do wrong. She's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I think she's just really smart.
Yeah.
And, another thing that I think she did, which was really smart, was she got out of the game for a while.
Yeah.
There's so many actors and so many artists in one form or another who feel like they got to just hold on, and all that does is just foster bitterness and cynicism.
Right.
And you learn that you got out too late.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Barbara was smart and she said, I'm out now. And thankfully, Wingard and Barrett called her for You're Next and gave her that taste again.
Yeah.
That put the spark in her system, and now she's a veritable force in the genre.
Yeah. That's awesome. You talked a little bit about it, but what I was surprised about this film tonally was how erotic it felt. Like, that was like a big shock to me. And I think that is...
Especially at 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock in the morning, yes. But that is needed so much more in movies, and I give you tons of credit, because I feel like the erotic thriller's trying to make a comeback in some ways.
Yeah, but you know what? For a long time, it was gone.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't that it was gone, it was just it got replaced.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, erotic cinema was working on multiple levels.
Yeah.
It's there to entertain, but also to titillate a little, and be a slightly more accessible version of porn, if you will.
Right.
Maybe with some story and some character and some style or whatever.
Yeah.
I grew up in the era of the Skinamax film and
right.
the erotic thriller from the 80s and 90s. Like that was my jam, if
right.
you will, if you know what I mean. I think
like
you do.
HBO After Dark and
yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
And what's funny is that was one of the things that really came to fruition when we swapped the genders.
Yeah.
But also just when it came to, if you know Lovecraft does a really good job in having protagonists tell their story within the context of the story.
Yeah.
So, in Suitable Flesh, a good majority of the film is a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
It's Heather's recounting of these very weird events while she's in a mental institution, while she's in a padded cell.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking to myself, without going into full dream logic, what are the ways that I can visualize how she is conveying the story?
Yeah.
She grew up around the same time that I was growing up, where
love it.
Erotic thrillers were the language of sexuality for many people. That was what was in people's heads when they were fantasizing.
Right.
So considering that this was her version of it, it felt right to use a lot of the color palettes and a lot of the stylistic tics.
Yeah.
Not just of the the kind of Shannon Tweed films and body chemistry from Mark Singer from back in the day, but
yeah.
The elevated erotic storytelling from say Brian De Palma, Dressed to Kill or Body
right.
Double,
right.
or Verhoeven with The Fourth Man, and even
Showgirls or whatever.
Well, Showgirls too,
yeah.
But that was where he goes into high camp.
Basic Instinct.
Yes,
yeah.
Basic Instinct,
yeah.
or even you go further back with Spetters. I don't know if you know the movie Spetters, but he was using sexuality as a language tool in a way.
Right.
And I wanted to do that. So
yeah.
I kept thinking and some people like it, some people don't, but the way that we were going to portray the sexiness and how it is evoking this kind of Skinamax kind of schematic, that's how she saw the world.
Right.
That's how she saw her story. That's how she was telling it to her friend.
Right.
And that's why we shot it the way we shot it.
Yeah.
And again, some people dig it, some people don't. I just knew that I was being true to the character, and if I was trying to shoot a Wes Anderson movie,
right.
it wouldn't work right,
Yeah.
It wouldn't be right if you were doing, Scorsese type shots.
Correct.
But if you're doing moments where she walks in from one room to another and, the day turns in, or the night turns into day or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, you can see that as something that is, a little more stylistically funky or whatever, but that's the sort of thing that dreams are made of too.
Yeah.
So I felt like I could get away with that. A lot of that funky stuff doesn't happen after the story's finished.
Yeah.
Now we get into the reality of it, and when the reality hits, it gets fucking brutal.
Yeah. Gets pretty gnarly.
As well as should.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of gnarly too, you have some scenes. I'm not giving away spoilers or anything like that, but things get bloody, and that's always fun.
A little bit.
Talk about sort of doing that on set. Are those the most fun days to shoot?
No.
Or is that the most difficult?
No, those are not the shooting gore and violence and the prosthetics and as a kid growing up and reading Fangoria
right.
and watching all those splatter movies and everything, there is one moment like you're going, isn't it fun?
Yeah.
It's when a gag goes right.
Yeah.
And I'd say 9 times out of 10, and this is no offense to any of the artisans that I've worked with in the past, this is just how it happens.
Right.
A lot of times when you hear the first AD go 3, 2, 1, and then the gag happens and it just kind of goes.
Oh yeah.
It's not fun.
Right.
And then the reset sucks, and like all the stuff, and then that your actor's uncomfortable.
Right.
To me, it's some of the most nerve-wracking days because, and I sit there and I go, I should be enjoying this. There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot of cleanup. You know, there's a lot of factors that are going to prevent you from making your day. Which on a low-budget film like the one that we were on, which was my lowest budget film, but like every second counts.
Yeah.
And when it comes to gag effects, they eat up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And this is where it's unfortunate to see the evolution of gore and like prosthetic effects and makeup effects and stuff like that getting turned over through VFX now.
Right.
But I get it because there were 2 or 3 moments in the shoot where I had a producer and they're allowed to do this because they're being responsible with the money. Right. Where they're going, can't we just do this in post?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, we can't. We have to. Like, I can tell the difference between real blood and CG blood. And yes, this means that now we're going to spend another 45 minutes getting the actor rigged up to get it, to take a bullet hit. Right. Whereas now you get them on set. You don't even need a green screen anymore.
Yeah.
You can just put them on screen. Make sure that they do this, and put some squirting in the background in post, and you're good to go. There's no cleanup, no muss, no fuss. Right. But what you sacrifice is tangibility, and the authenticity of it. That I still think to this day, audiences can, whether they know it or not. Yeah. My mom can tell. Right. And if my mom can tell, everyone else can tell.
And I think like the horror fans, they're craving it too.
But now if you have really smart filmmakers that blend the two together, that are able to, erase rods, or if you have still to this day, I think one of the best digital, practical composites or combinations. Danny Boyle movie that he did with Rosario Dawson and Vincent Cassel. Yeah. And what you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it's like Vortex.
Oh, it's gonna kill me. I have to look it up. Yeah. But there's an effect in that you'd never be able to create without using both practical and digital effects. Right. And when you do that, and the filmmakers are smart enough to know everything from what kind of shots you need to the plate shots that you need to the lighting, the performance itself. If you can blend those two together, that's where a lot you don't find a lot of special effects artists like K&B or those guys. They never say no, we hate CG, right? Because you look at The Walking Dead and half those effects for those zombies are practical, and then they're caving in the chest that you'd never be able to do because an actor can't do that, or have half of their jaw off. Ripped off. If you can blend those two together, that to me is the best use of those kind of effects. And we have a couple of those, a few moments of those, but I tried to be as practical as possible on this.
You got some really good ones on this.
I think so. Yeah, we had a one-man band on this. His name is Greg McDougall. He done a ton of shows, ton of TV, ton of movies, but he worked with Stewart. Awesome. So that was another reason why we hired him. I was like, I literally want to get the band back together. As many people who've worked with Stewart in the past, I want their input on all of this. And there were times that Greg would be like, Stewart would like this kind of blood. And I'm like, well, if it's good enough for Gordon, it's good enough for me.
Hell yeah.
And then that's how we went with it.
That's awesome. I just want to tell you, I think this is one of your best films. I loved it, man. You haven't really had any misses, in my opinion. Everly and Mayhem. I mean, dude, you're just...
Haven't seen Nights of Bad Aston, huh?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Why don't we keep the track record the way it is?
All right. Yeah.
But you know what? And this has happened at Fantastic Fest, where I've had many people come up to me and go, fucking love Knights of Badassdom.
Yeah.
And this was a very valuable lesson that I learned from Don Coscarelli.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Beastmaster. It's one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Right.
I'm on the commentary for the new Vinegar Syndrome disc that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
I've become friends with Don over the years, and he came in once to our podcast. I do a podcast with Adam Green called The Movie Crypt.
Oh, awesome.
And we had him on the show, and, you know, Phantasm and, you know, Bubba Hotep and all the movies that he's done before, we were just, you know, filleting him on all those.
Yes.
And then when I went, dude, Beastmaster, holy shit, his face changed. It almost looked like someone stuck a lemon in his mouth.
Yeah.
Like he went,
which had to shock you.
Of course.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was going through hell because that was right when Knights of Badassdom had been released, and people were going like, "This is a piece of shit. It's poorly made. The effects are horrible."
Right.
I had the cut completely taken away from me, like years earlier, and it was purely because I just went, "No, that's not fair," and they said, "Fuck you, and you're out."
Wow.
And, you know, the movie was a Ponzi scheme. It was made for all the wrong reasons, and I was left out of the lurch.
Right.
So I was in hell. I was like questioning my life and going like, I'm a failure now. I'm in my sophomore slump. It was a terrible time.
Right.
So I was going through all of that, and then I started saying to Don, like, "Oh, I fucking love Beastmaster." And when he said, like, when he made that face, we go, What happened? He goes, "They took the cut away from me. That's not my film."
Yeah.
It was everything that I was going through with Knights of Badassdom.
Yeah.
Yet I'm sitting here telling him it's the greatest fucking movie he ever made.
Right.
So who's to say who's wrong?
Right.
You know, and that's the beauty of cinema, is that no matter what, as long as you have conviction behind your opinions, no one can tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Because for every, Moonlight, and for every La La Land, or what, Coda, whatever big movie, like becomes like everyone's favorite movie that year.
Right.
There's going to be someone who loves what was the number one movie at the Razzies.
Yeah.
For every Schindler's List, there's going to be a Garbage Pail Kids the movie, or a Hot to Trot.
Right.
That you go, I can't tell you you're wrong.
Yeah. This
so,
is why we celebrate movies like The Toxic Avenger. And Suitable Flesh. We hope so many people go see it. It's going to be in theaters October 27th.
Yes.
It is just such a good time, man, and I'm so just honestly really proud of this film. It's very good. Again,
I hope you guys like it. And I hope, you know what? To be honest, I hope it gets delayed.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring sexy horror back. And if you guys walk out feeling a little randy afterwards, then boy, oh boy,
you did your job.
Wear a condom.
Yes. All right, Joe Lynch, you're the man. Thanks again.